It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, I apologize in advance if the video sounds different. I am experimenting with new audio settings to try to take care of some of the digital hits I was getting on this headset. The online troubleshooting is not great, but a wonderful viewer of these videos and a guy I work with gave me a troubleshooting tip, so I'm trying it. So we'll see how it goes. But we're talking about dying on your white horse. And this is a metaphor that I got from Brené Brown, who is an expert on shame. You may have seen her TED Talk, but it's the metaphor of somebody, a man approached her after one of her talks and says, I like what you had to say, but my wife and daughters, they'd rather see me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall off. You say you want us to be vulnerable and real, but come on, you can't stand it. It makes you sick to see us like that. And that's where the metaphor comes from. And this actually comes from conversations we've been having on the Discord server. And somebody asked me to do a video on breakups, getting over breakups. I've already done a few videos on getting over breakups, but I think increasingly that this is a connected concept. Now, hear me out. I'll do the help support this channel, but hear me out on this one. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK, or the GoFundMe, which might be evolving soon. But yeah, to support groups like this that make suggestions for this sort of content. So in order to get any healing in any way and a breakup, getting past it, putting it in its right place in your mind and getting on with your life so you can go into another relationship not carrying the baggage from the broken one, that involves a state of vulnerability where you grieve the loss, but you also allow yourself to go through, the many stages of grief, which includes anger. And I know when I was badly struggling with depression, that's what was keeping me stuck. Every time I started coming out of the depression, I'd start feeling angry. It's sort of like, I described it as, when your leg falls asleep or your foot falls asleep or a body part, and it really freaking feels weird and hurts when the blood flow is restored to it and you're like, ah, that's what my emotions felt like. And people were so punitive regarding that it just, I shut down the anger and fell back into depression. And grief is the same way. I'm dealing with some personal life stuff right now where someone is, they're an addict and they're not processing grief. And so they're lashing out and being nasty and cruel and just mean and just hurting anybody they can because they can't handle the negative feelings. And this person happens to be a woman. And there is social enforcement of dying on your white horse syndrome. I've seen it. This is the weirdest damn analogy, but it's apt. So hear me out. I was on Twitter the other day, X, because somebody pointed out a particular conflict he was having with a woman. This is so stupid, but it's going somewhere. BioWare had posted an International Men's Day thing with some of the Dragon Age characters. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't have Cullen or Alistair. They had characters like the Iron Bull, and it was Fenris, Varric, Oghren, the Iron Bull, Solus, and Dorian. And this one woman responded asking why they put that misogynist Oghren in instead of Zevran. Zavan Fangirl. Okay. I mean, I noticed that, you know, I love Alistair, so why wasn't he there? Um, Maybe because the graphics were too old and it kind of didn't hold up, but it's not important. It was the calling Ogren a misogynist because in the game he's perpetually drunk and acting out his hurt over his ex-wife dumping him. Well, I guess technically still his wife. They're not actually divorced. That's part of the problem. But his wife dumped him for another woman. And when you finally meet Bronca, she's just as bad as he is. It's a very abusive relationship, and to me, was a commentary on the dwarf system of sort of caste based marriage, and how, Bronca was considered a paragon, and so she could do no wrong no matter how poorly she treated Ogren. And so while Ogren did make some statements that, were pretty nasty towards his ex-wife, he was doing it out of a place of pain. And that's, one of those things where I have had to tell so many men that are hurting that, look, I don't want to cut you off from working through this stuff. Don't put this in writing, because your ex is vindictive. If she subpoenas your texts, if she gets a hold of your DMs, she's going to find these statements. She's going to use them against you. Please, let's just get together. We can talk. You can vent. I'm fine with that. But don't create a trail that's going to come back to bite you. And it is just a reality that a lot of men express pain that way, in ways that look really bad in isolation. And this is one of these, I ranted on Friday about treating women in society like adult children. And hello, kitty. A scout. And this is one of those things where it crops up that we've all had someone, we've all maybe been that person who gets treated badly and just, I hate men, this, that, and the next thing, all men are scum, and worse. And that's considered okay. It's considered acceptable. It's not scary behavior when women do it. But when men do it, it's seen as proof of misogyny. And I mean, all men are scum is an objectively misandrous statement, right? It's talking about all men. This is one of these things where we can accept that it is often part of the process without putting a moral judgment on it. Is it ideal? No. But if you expect all human beings to constantly act in an ideal way all the time, you will have no friends. You will constantly be disappointed. People have low moments. And unfortunately, with social media, too often people are judged by the worst moment of their life and, what they say and do within that. And that's not fair. No one can pass that test. We all screw up. And the last thing you need when you're hurting like that is for a bunch of condemnation and derision from the entire freaking internet. But people get it in their personal lives as well. And that's where we get this dying on their white horse syndrome. Certain things may not be things that are the best to talk about to your spouse or your kids. In that guy's example, there are ways of being upset without getting violent and throwing things, and all these details are missing. But the sentiment of they'd rather I die on top of my white horse than watch me fall off, I think is something a lot of men feel. And it's connected to that inability to have those get angry, be bitter, um, and then process it and come out the other side and see things more objectively. And so they get stuck, not able to move past the breakup. And this is obviously not the only reason why someone is unable to move on. It's just the one I'm talking about today. And it's interesting because I recorded with Aquila and Jan Helge over the weekend about the Norse figure Loki and his bitterness, and how it's a cautionary tale against getting stuck in bitterness and exploding because of bitterness. And so maybe that's why this is front of mind. That'll be on Aquila's channel sometime. I don't know when. But might be up already. But yeah, you have to feel the bitterness to process it. And you need space to do that. And sometimes, this is what safe spaces were supposed to be, that we'll talk about, we'll talk about some of the metaphors and whether you really meant them later, or maybe bring it up gently to give the guy a chance to go, I don't really mean that, or I'm just exaggerating. But in a moment like that, you can't condemn the morality of it, because human beings are not paragons. They're not. I mean, that was the whole thing about the dwarf paragons and Branka being a shit person. And you see the emotional and psychological damage that, Oghren feeling suddenly not good enough for her because she basically created something that moved dwarven society forward, and that makes her superior in all ways. It's fucked up, because no human is really a paragon all the time. Everybody has rough edges. Everyone has bad moments. And people need to be able to get that out and give voice to it, because it is always worse in silence. Now, obviously, if you trust someone to keep a confidence with that, then they go telling, that's a betrayal. And that we need to make space for this stuff, because some things don't come out well when you're in that point. And I see a lot of guys taking on way too much responsibility for the failure of a relationship, because they don't want to get mad at someone they loved. And women don't have the same socially enforced, and I want to be very careful about this, because I have seen this in women. It's more up and down, but certain members of my family are, he's a good person that does bad things. No, he's a bad person. But they criticize other people like crazy. So it comes out. It's not seen as threatening behavior when women do it, even though sometimes it very much is. And so men pack it all down and pack it all down. And as somebody who was a packer, emotional, pack it all down. And that's what got me stuck in depression for longer than I otherwise would have been, because I wasn't allowed to get angry. Because I've experienced it firsthand, I know it's a real thing. And so what do? You need to be able to get it out. And even, getting it out and getting the bitterness out and getting the hurt out and getting the sense of betrayal out and the rage and all the negative stuff, even if you just write it down Or tell somebody in advance, I just need a vent session. Just don't hold me to anything I say. It's better to get that out, and it's better to, you don't have to think your ex is the absolute worst person in the world or Satan incarnate to acknowledge where they hurt you and where they did things that weren't fair. And I see a lot of guys not take that step because, I mean, I don't know the specific reasons. I can speculate that it's because they're afraid of judgment. They don't want to go there. They love them. They were a good person. They've sort of idealized the person that hurt them. And they believe very strongly in personal accountability and not passing blame onto other people. And, that again, responsibility isn't blame. Being accountable means being accountable for your part in it, not all of it. When it's a breakup and there isn't abuse involved, it's usually both people. Sometimes it's just people weren't suited, something changed, somebody may have regretted it eventually, but at the end of the day, in this case, if a girl broke your heart, I'm talking about the person who asked me, it's okay to say that hurts. And it's okay to express that feels unfair. It is a rejection. And I know a lot of guys that stay really stuck in that because they're trying to figure out why it happened. And this is another version of dying on your white horse. Because at the end of the day, if you don't know why, if there wasn't a conversation about why, that was her choice. Or if it's a same-sex couple, his choice. Their choice if they're non-binary. At the end of the day, they just decided not to have the conversation, not to tell you. And that for whatever reason, they made that choice. That's all you can know. And that is on them. No matter what the reason. Oh, I was afraid to get mad. You'd blow up, all that stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, being dumped doesn't feel good. And that tells you something about the emotional maturity of the other person, which is hard to realize when you didn't see it during the relationship. And this is why I really stress not treating women like adult children, because women get too much of a pass of, oh, I didn't tell you because you get upset. Now, okay, some men do this too. I don't like it when anybody does it because, okay, why is the person getting upset? Because they're heartbroken. Yeah, they're gonna get upset. And they have the right to do that. That's a legitimate feeling. If you can't tell someone tough stuff, that's part of the reason the relationship is failing. Because relationships work when there is a paradigm that you make it hurt as little as possible within your control. But sometimes things are going to be hard for a person to hear. They're not going to take it well. They need to know anyway, because you're robbing them of their choices and therefore manipulating them. You shouldn't hurt someone as punishment. But something like, look, here's what's going on for me. I'm telling you in advance because I don't want the first time you hear this to be when I can't take it anymore. Those are the conversations someone needs to be able to have to make a relationship between two adults work. And you have to recognize that as much as that stings, it's better than just one day that person being gone. And it's always telling when a guy doesn't know why a relationship ended. And it's usually, she broke up with me long distance, or she just sort of shut down and drifted away. And that is some feminized social programming of, don't make trouble. Don't cause conflicts. Conflicts happen. And that's part of the reason I cannot handle people that are incredibly conflict averse. Nobody likes conflict. But some people avoid conflict to the point that it is unhealthy. And if you suddenly got dropped by a girl and you have no idea why, educated guess, high probability that's what it was. That there was something not working for her, and instead of having the conversation and making trouble or making you mad, she just ditched. And it was a solvable problem until that moment. I know a lot of guys, not all guys, but the good guys, will definitely make adjustments, at least try, for the person they love. And, a lot of these guys, I know they can accept correction because I've said, okay, this isn't working for me with them. That's one of the things I test out. Are they willing to accommodate? Are they willing to compromise? And a lot of these guys are. They want to know when something is bothering somebody because they very much want to make the correction for the other person's comfort. They care. And it just seems to me that the women in their lives were people pleasers. That's very common. And so instead of having the tough conversation of, okay, this isn't working for me, the way I frame it, and this is what I believe is the healthiest way of doing it. Hello again, Scout. That I always say, look, you didn't know this was bothering you, so I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm letting you know now. This is bothering me. I need it to stop. I can't handle this continuing. And you give people some time to adjust. But there's no point in getting angry with them for something that they didn't know. And you can assume they didn't know. Because if they did know, they're just an asshole. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Assume they didn't know. And just say, I'd like it to stop going forward. That is the best way. Because they're like, all right, you're giving me a chance to succeed. But that's not nice. That kind of conversation in girl world, that violates the nice game. The nice game is what I call that ridiculous passive aggressiveness that women are taught, where the loser is the one that's not nice because they have to be authentic. And those are the conversations adults have to have. Those are the conversations leaders have. Those are the conversations you have with relationships that are healthy in the long term. And with someone with a trauma condition, those conversations are essential because, one, they need to go both ways. They need to know they can do it too. Set those boundaries. Very important for overcoming trauma. But also, they need to know you'll tell them before they can't fix it. Because otherwise they spend their entire time in a state of hypervigilance, wondering what went wrong and what's going to go wrong next. And that's dying on your white horse. That's not a healthy relationship. And if that was your ex, that's hard. Because then it's like, did she ever really care? Well, yes, she did. It wasn't something wrong with you. It was something missing in her. she hadn't developed conflict resolution skills. And, sort of hangout friendships can survive a lack of conflict resolution skills because nothing ever goes too deep. But anybody you are vulnerable with, in order for it to work long term, both parties need to have developed, compatible conflict resolution skills. And if your partner didn't have that, it's not your fault, But that's something to think about going forward. This person who always seems to be understanding, this is this ideal woman that doesn't fucking exist. And if someone's always understanding, if someone's never, okay, that goes too far for me, I don't like that, then they're hiding shit. And that's people-pleasing behavior. And that is a form of manipulation. And that's something I had to learn to break that cycle because, oh my God, every woman in my family, except for my maternal grandmother, who I took after, was like that. And it was really like, I hated when it was done to me. But I never saw the example of an alternative. And so I started modeling myself after male characters because, quite frankly, I liked the whole thing where two characters fight and then they're buds. They work it out. This insidious, passive-aggressive, well, you know what you did. Shit, no. They don't know what they did. They are confused. And they're not going to know. Tell them. But this is just, oh, don't start trouble. You have to be nice. Bullshit. There's a reason I say to people, first thing you need to know about me, I'm an asshole. Then I don't violate my brand when I do the necessary, okay, this isn't working for me, and here's why. I'd like you to stop. No hard feelings. I know you didn't know, but going forward, this has to stop happening. That is not something that is really a choice for me. That is my reality because of PTS. And that's hard won, and I'm glad for that, because not doing that was eating me alive as somebody who's, been on the receiving end of just everything being gone one day and having the rug totally yanked out from under you, and knowing that lingering pain of not understanding it, of feeling really unfair and not being able to move past it even partially until I was able to experience those feelings of unfairness and be able to put voice to it. Also realizing I'd done that to other people, and gaining the motivation and the emotional equipment to stop doing that and having an alternative and accepting the consequences of doing things a different way. That allowed me to make some really, really great friends who we have each other's backs. We don't screw each other over. Most of the people you meet will not really understand respect. They don't really understand having the other person's back. And if you meet someone who does understand that, they understand that have your buddy's back in public, to a point, like, don't enable actively bad behavior. That's not helping them. But when possible, disagree with them in private. Pull them aside afterwards in a quiet time, partially so they can save face, partially so you can actually have the conversation and make sure you have a common understanding. When you meet someone like that, hold on to them. Because if you both have that skill, any problem can be worked through. Not necessarily is going to work through. Emotions can run hot, but the possibility of a positive outcome is possible. Because in that scenario, people are allowed to fall off their white horse every so often, right? Because you got somebody there picking you back up. They're not going to deny you fell off the horse. You're not going to say, oh no, that was totally good. But it's like, look, it happens. You'll get it next time. Or, you know, we all do it. Nobody's perfect. It's okay that you made a mistake. The parts that aren't okay, you work through those so that they are okay. Those are real friends. Friends don't let friends die on their white horse. And the other side of that is if someone is saying, it's okay to fall off the horse, I gotcha. Let them do it. You're not making anything any better by choosing to die on that white horse. It's not healthy. It's not noble. It's lacking. That is where male disposability comes from. It is often self-inflicted, but self-inflicted because it has been enforced by society in the past. There is another way. There are people who aren't like that. Ask the number of people that I have gone, no, we don't do that. Or I've said, no, I can't follow you here. Or, you know, I've clashed. And then I'm like, people are always surprised when there's a disagreement, there's a fight. And I'm like, well, yeah, but we worked it out. It's done. There's no lingering resentment. That's the way I am. If I don't say I'm mad at you, assume I'm not mad at you. I'll tell you I'm mad at you. You know, you will not be blindsided. I'll tell you. Because I don't want anybody dying on their white horse. Right? If you come at me and try to knock me off my horse, yeah, we're going to have a problem. But if you just fall sometimes, that's good. And this is a responsibility for everybody, not just men. Women do enable and enforce this shit, and it is a problem, and it needs to be talked about. And the reason I get into trouble in feminist circles, and you know why I'm doing an entire series about why Zelda isn't a damsel in distress, but even if she was, what's wrong with that, is because we've demonized vulnerability and needing help. And what the fuck? It's not healthy. Don't die on your white horse. Don't. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LanaK. Or buy a one-time Lana Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LanaK. Or the GoFundMe for our men's programming. Link in the description box to everything below. And don't forget the Zelda video that was out last week. Give that a chance as well. Thanks for watching. Manly Mondays. No dying on your white horse.